Hello everyone and welcome to FiST Chat, the vodcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again on this nice Sunday afternoon with my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks, Ben. Hello, FiST Chat fans. It's a beautiful spring weekend.
Absolutely, and we're going to be talking about how we're all mutated in some form or fashion in today's episode. But before we get into that, don't forget our website, FiSTchat.com. You can get all of our links there. You can subscribe to our audio via iTunes, SoundCloud, and our RSS feeds, and our videos on YouTube, Vimeo, and Digicosm TV. You can interact with us on Twitter, Google+, and Facebook, so I'd love to hear from you there. We've got our ebook, The FiST Report, at fistreport.com, only 99 cents, and a perfect way to spend a Sunday afternoon, if you're not listening to us, of course, and it helps to support this show. And we've also got our supplementary content, the weekly blogs, photography on Instagram and Flickr. And if you think anyone is interested in our weekly ramblings on film, science, and technology, feel free to recommend our channel to them. All right, we are going to talk about genetic mutations today, but we're going to do it through a interesting lens, so to speak. There was a interesting piece on the ABC from Dr. Cole about lactose intolerance.
Yes.
And at first, when you do your research for these things and just trying to find, things to talk about, I didn't know whether this topic was going to grab me, but what really grabbed me with this was the idea that we weren't really lactose tolerant, yet somehow there's so many people that are able to drink milk, and it was because of between 5,000 and 10,000 years ago there was a mutation at some point because of in the sense that cattle herders and their offspring, because they were obviously herding the cattle and they were obviously milking the cows and whatnot, that somehow a genetic mutation stepped in to account for the fact that we could consume the byproduct, I guess, from the cow. And that's a very fascinating idea that whether it's an environmental factor or the fact that something that humans instigated then caused a mutation that allowed us to do something that we couldn't do before. Do you find that kind of thing fascinating?
Oh, yeah. Look, in every population, you get genetic variations between individuals. You even get genetic variations between members of the same family, of course. And these are mutations. And we shouldn't think of mutations always as being a bad thing, like mutant people out of toxic swamps or anything like that. In reality, mutations are adaptations or give some people an advantage. And we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have thumbs that work like that if we didn't have mutation. We wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things as humans we take for granted without slowly these mutations evolving. So what it takes, if you want to think about it in this instance, some people in those herding families probably had a mutation which made them lactose tolerant. And, of course, the sad fact is that this would have happened over generations, and perhaps because they were herders, nutritionally they, got great benefits out of drinking the milk. We know that milk is very good for us. And very sadly, you probably would have found a lot of the children who maybe were lactose intolerant weren't as strong because they didn't get as much nutrition through the milk, and probably their genes might have died out. It might be something as simple as that. And so that's how lactose tolerance came about. And when we see now people becoming lactose intolerant, that might just be our genetics swinging back the other way.
Okay. So, but it kind of poses the question to me that in the initial instance, I guess we'll never know unless we find a Doc Brown time machine and go back there and see how it all happened. But this idea that what would have led these people to sort of start, say, experimenting with cows in the first place, if, for example, at that time there would have been that problem that we were intolerant to a product that the cow was producing.
Okay, so mutations only exist within a population over an extended period of time, typically if they're beneficial.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine, certainly before they were herding the cows, they're probably chasing them around trying to eat them.
Yeah.
then potentially maybe they realised, who knows how they were consuming the milk, but at some stage they must have realised that these animals had milk.
Yeah.
And that, by following these animals around, which was part of their lifestyle as hunters and nomads, that's how they could guarantee nutrition. And they would have started drinking the milk. And if you can imagine, like anything that, people don't like or doesn't agree with them, some milk originally and not being able to digest it. And they wouldn't have tried it at all. But there would have been groups of people, part of the population, who could consume the milk because they had a mutation to allow them to consume the milk.
Yeah.
And that's basically how these herding populations would have started. Yep. Those who naturally could consume the milk would pursue consuming the milk, and those who couldn't, those who were lactose intolerant, wouldn't have bothered.
I'm just thinking too that this could have implications for us in the future when, environmental changes, or even if we are to step foot into new environments such as in space and whatnot, that potentially, who knows what will happen, but we may adapt in that way as well if we move to new environments.
Just remember that for every living being is 50% genetics.
Yep.
And 50% environment. So there's always that pressure. So in this instance, for instance, being lactose tolerant allowed people to consume the milk.
Yep.
And then therefore it happened. If you take away that environment, and because it was beneficial, because it was really good nutrition for them, of course they populated more quickly than the lactose intolerant. And they would have become the dominant genetic identity there. Likewise, if you then move into an environment where that's not an issue anymore, populations aren't selected for like that. So it's a very interesting thing. You're right, in space, people with special genetics that maybe give them a stronger heart in outer space or more durable muscles, over time, they will probably be the best people. That's how we will evolve to become a space race.
Yeah, exactly. And just finally, I guess it kind of speaks volumes to the impact of agriculture on humanity, really. That, obviously cattle herding's one aspect of it, but there's a whole range of things to do with agriculture that have really transformed our species quite a lot.
Well, the very first technological wave came with the agrarian or agricultural revolution. The industrial revolution and then the tech revolution after that could never have taken place if people couldn't grow a surplus of food and store it, because it meant then people could specialise in technology or crafts. And, otherwise, you spend your whole day looking for something to eat, doesn't leave you a lot of time to dream up fantastic gadgets.
Exactly. All right, well, we might move on from that. It's interesting. We'll see what the future holds. Some might argue that given the recent tech advances that our society's changed quite a lot, even in just the last 5 years. So who knows what will happen in the next 10, 20, or even 100.
Well, that's right. And there are people along this way who say that we've stopped evolving. I think we're just evolving differently, but the argument is that those environmental pressures aren't there on us like they were traditionally.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll move on to our news bites now, and our film news bite was a curious one. Ties in with the recent federal election campaign. An independent, McGowan's Indi campaign inspires film, and for those that are unaware, in Australia there was a rather curious aftermath to the federal election where a potential cabinet minister was unseated from her long-held seat by an independent, by a bunch of people there that just wanted to get rid of her. And it seems like they managed to do it. And that's inspired a documentary. This is from bordermail.com.au. Melburnians David Escort and sound technician Jamie Corralin and Philadelphia-born producer Rebecca Hansons-Reid. They followed the independent MP Cathy McGowan throughout the election campaign, and I guess it could be an important film in the sense that this is people power almost, really, because Cathy McGowan, as far as I understand, wasn't necessarily someone who sort of wanted to be the MP, but she was sort of found to be the most suitable person to take on this task. And it's an interesting sort of, it would be an interesting documentary to watch.
Well, yes, exactly. For our Australian audience, they've probably heard about this on election night, and there's all sorts of backroom deals and some other retributions that apparently brought this to a head. So the documentary should be fascinating. I look forward to seeing it and finding out the real story about what went on. But it's, documentaries like this are fantastic. That's the best bit about, documentary making.
Absolutely. Now, our science news bite from Discovery News. Brain stethoscope turns seizures into music. What started out as an artistic pursuit quickly turned into a scientific purpose as two professors from Stanford University realized their musical recordings of brain activity could be used to identify seizures. So they did some tests. They set their EEG recordings against music, and then they figured, well, what if this real-time data could be used to give, for caregivers, say they want to know if a seizure's happening and maybe it's not obvious, and maybe this would be a way to signal to a caregiver or even to a nurse, doctor, whatever, whoever's monitoring a patient, that they're having a seizure or some sort of reaction. Very fascinating and interesting sort of use of the technology there.
Well, it is. I mean, and it's a great use for that as well. I mean, I guess it means if somebody is, on their own, other people can be alerted and notified. So it's a very useful piece. But fascinating. It started as an art project, and it effectively interprets what's going on inside somebody's head, and then creates music out of it. Very nice. Really.
And tied in with a few other devices, it could also be done remotely almost if there isn't anyone around.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So it could be quite interesting. And finally, our tech news bite. I think we've circled privacy and social media and web posts before, but this one's a different angle from the BBC. US law lets teens delete web posts. California has passed a law that will enable under 18s to make websites delete their personal information. The law, which will take effect in 2015, only covers content including photos generated by the individual. Teens often self-reveal before they self-reflect and may post sensitive personal information about themselves and about others without realizing the consequences, says Chief Executive James Steyer in a blog post. Of course, back in May, Google Chairman Eric Schmidt said the internet needed a delete button, but not everyone thinks it's a good idea. This is another example of, you need to be able to take control of what it is that you're posting, and maybe it is a good idea to offer the option for someone who maybe not as informed as a teenager to the consequences of what happens when you post things. But then, is it a bad idea to have that?
I don't know. I mean, it's not a bad idea to have it. How would it work is my first question.
Yeah.
So once I've got that image up there, really? You hear all sorts of stories about people complaining to Facebook about certain groups and, stalkers and all sorts of things and, taking months for anything to happen.
Yep.
I just don't know. In this day and age, a digital file can be shared, copied. Somebody can screen capture the image. I just don't understand how it would work. Unless they put a code into your digital image that you can delete anywhere it appears on the internet, which I guess they probably do have the technology for. I mean, if they've got Prism, surely this would work. And then you could hit delete, and any image which somehow contains that code deletes. That might be how you could do it. Otherwise, how on earth? What, are you going to send emails to every website or every place your image appears?
Yeah, I know. Or there's the flip side. Someone remotely could press a delete button on you and erase all of your information without you wanting it to be erased.
Oh, that's Wikipedia for you, even today.
Yeah. I noticed too, just on a side note, that they're asking for donations again. They've got that little yellow message up the top again, which is interesting. It's a new way of doing things, even though they've done it a couple of times now.
Well, after my personal fight with Wikipedia, which I won't go into here, they ain't getting anything from me.
Alrighty, we might wrap it up there then. So thanks again, Steve, for the chat.
Thanks, FiST chat fans. Let us know what you think about Wikipedia. Let us know if you're lactose intolerant. Just tweet us. It'd be great.
And we'll cover it, absolutely. All right, so that's it for this episode. So we'll catch you next time.